Hello, everyone. Welcome to Northern Lights, Canadian Women in Tech and Business. My name is Berlin Mathur, and through this podcast, we'll explore the lives and the stories of some of the most dynamic and successful women in business and tech throughout Canada. My mission is to inspire young Canadian girls that anything is possible, and with these stories, I hope they garner knowledge, fortitude, and the perseverance to pursue their dreams. I'm so excited to be speaking with my first guest on this new exciting project, Stacey Allaster. Born in Windsor, Ontario, and raised in Welland, she is the United States Tennis Association's chief executive, professional tennis and US Open tournament director, and former CEO of the Women's Tennis Association. She is a massive figure in the field of international sports and has been a major advocate for women throughout her leadership tenure. In 2022, she was awarded the Order of Canada in the companion category for her work in gender equality and is a Forbes Most Powerful Woman in Sports. Most recently, she was awarded the Billie Jean King Leadership Award due to her work in ensuring equity for women's sports. I'm so delighted to have Stacey join me today. Stacey, thank you so much for being the inaugural interview for Northern Lights, Canadian Women in Tech and Business. I'm so excited to be able to speak with you.
Well, I am so excited to be on this journey with you. I didn't realize I'm number one.
Yes, you are.
So when you are uber successful, I'm going to think back. Oh, I
Thank
remember
you so
being on
much.
Berlin's Northern Lights podcast. And I love the name. So cool.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have you, and it's such an honor to be able to speak with you. I was thinking maybe just to start, you could briefly share with us your journey into the world of sports management and how you transition into leadership roles within such high-profile organizations.
Sure. Well, I am a Made in Canada international sport and entertainment leader. And it all started at a little tennis club called the Welland Tennis Club on the border of Niagara and Buffalo.
Mhm.
And I was a good little player, but I quickly learned I wasn't going to be that good. And I didn't have much money, so I used to clean the red clay courts, clean the washrooms, and that's kind of how I started to pay for my lessons. And then at 16, I became a certified teaching professional under Tennis Canada's coaching program. And I was in the 11th grade, and I remember having to tell the chemistry teacher that I had to travel to Toronto for my exam.
Mhm.
And she said, and I said, I can't be there for the test. She goes, well, good luck to you. What are you going and doing that for? So I did enjoy one day going back to Notre Dame, so I could I could tell Miss Nylander that decision was a good one. But the teaching, becoming a certified pro at 16, began really my business experience. It gave me that entrepreneurial spirit. And at 16 years of age, I started my own business
Mhm.
and teaching lessons and communicating in leagues and knocking on companies' doors for sponsorship. And at 18, I became the director of the club, created a junior program with 150 kids, again, getting sponsors. And someone gave me a book, What They Don't Teach You at the Harvard Business School.
Mhm.
And it was written by Mark McCormick, and he really was the grandfather of sports management and marketing. And I read that book, and there were two pathways in sports business at that time. You got an MBA or you had a law degree. And so as I went to Western, my sights were on uh, going to law school, and I thought I wanted to be an agent.
Mhm.
Everything happens for a reason. That didn't happen. I didn't get into law school. And I then went to Toronto after graduating from Western.
Mhm.
Was the head pro at the Richmond Hill Country Club, 1,000 membership, and started. And then the Ontario Tennis Association came knocking, and they asked me to be in charge of their membership sales. And I ran around the province. You can visualize in my red cabriolet, white convertible, giving free tennis lessons, going into elementary schools, promoting tennis to get more kids to play, and asking volunteer executives to become members of the OTA. Again, there's a thread of sales in this journey. And then from there, I became the head of player development, getting sponsors. And I knew I wanted to work at Tennis Canada immediately. And every time a job came open at Tennis Canada, I applied and they turned me down.
Mhm.
They turned me down 3 times. finally, the president of Tennis Canada, Bob Moffat, gave me a contract for 3.5 months. Special projects coordinator. Do whatever they ask you to do. And I ended up during those 3.5 months getting a great job from CIBC to run the Toronto Blue Jays sponsorship program. The Jays had just come to Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real job, a real paying job. And I said to the guy who wouldn't hire me, and I was working for him, I got this job. He goes, well, good luck to you. If you don't want to wait around, then, be off with you. I went and told Bob Moffat that, and he said, give me 1 hour. The next hour, the guy who wouldn't hire me, he said, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm giving you a full-time job. I worked for that person for the next 4 years, sales, marketing, grinding it out, teaching tennis at night on the weekends. And 4 years later, I ended up taking his job. And I became
Wow.
the vice president of sales and marketing, also became the tournament director of what we now know as the National Bank Open presented by Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
And that journey was 18 years, which is hard to believe. 3 at the OTA, 15 at Tennis Canada. And then I had to really say, what do I want to do? And during the journey, I did my MBA at Ivy,
Mm-hmm.
the executive MBA, and I did a career plan. And I could stay in Canada, diversify in the entertainment and sport industry, or go international. And we chose international. And we chose to work for it was a partnership with my husband, John, the Women's Tennis Association. And I became quite known on the WTA through my leadership of the Canadian Open and the results that I had. I got on the board, and then they asked me to be the president in 2006. So
Wow.
we left Canada, which is a big decision to leave home, but it put me on the global stage. And in 2009, I became the chairman and CEO of the WTA, 55 events in 33 countries, being able to represent the best female athletes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this little kid from Welland, Ontario. It was just a dream. I did that for 10 years. We're going to talk about the obstacles, so we'll come back to it. And then I thought I was done in tennis. That was 28 years. And then the United States Tennis Association came knocking, and they said, we don't have anyone to run pro tennis. So I today, Stacey Allaster, who never played pro tennis, run the largest Grand Slam in the world. I run pro tennis here for the USTA, and I am year 8 in this journey. So that's the journey, and
Yeah.
we'll talk about the challenges, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's incredible. And, what an amazing journey you've had. It's so great to see your passion for tennis, flourish and continue even today. And, it really proves that everything happens for a reason, as you said.
It does. Everything does happen for a reason. I use the analogy of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and I did climb
Mhm.
Mount Kilimanjaro on our honeymoon. And anyone who's ever climbed, altitude can have different impacts on everyone. So it's kind of like these, you can train for it, you can prepare for it, but forces outside of your control are going to impact your career.
Yeah.
So it certainly wasn't linear, and it was sometimes backwards. But it definitely proved what this podcast is all about. Anything is possible.
Mhm.
I'm a little kid with limited tennis talent who never played pro tennis, but I run the largest enterprise in pro tennis. So certainly, if I can do it, anybody can do whatever they put their mind to.
That's just incredible. And I think maybe this would be a good opportunity for you to talk about some of the significant challenges you faced in
Right.
your career and how you overcame them.
So look, Tennis Canada turning me down 3 times, I think most people would, go off running somewhere else, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But I was just 2 things: persistent
Hmm.
and resilient. And life is full of challenges, and I think it was that combination of persistence and resilience and never giving up finding different ways to achieve held me in good stead. So that obviously was a big one. When I was at the WTA, I was near the end of 10 years. I got completely burnt out.
Mhm.
I was traveling 150 days a year internationally, building the business in Asia Pacific, and even the Energizer Bunny runs out of energy. And I think it was a hard lesson to leave. But you can look back on it now that ultimately you have to be, the corporate athlete. Just like an athlete, you've got to be physically, mentally, and emotionally strong. And who's in control? You're always in control. I always say to someone, if something happens, you have to look at yourself,
Mhm.
because ultimately your destiny is 100% in your hands, and it
Mhm.
won't be linear, and it'll be backwards and forwards and roller coaster. And maybe you won't go on a path that you thought you were. Like I thought I wanted to go to law school and be an agent, and thank God that never happened. But you find your way by bouncing and jumping back up. And management of the energy is so critical as you go through the journey, because you got to be your best self. And if you're tired,
Mhm.
you're not in good physical shape and haven't eaten well, it can really have an impact on your performance. It sounds so simple,
Yeah.
and the bottom line is this is simple. There is a lot of common sense to the
Yeah.
things that it's just about executing them consistently.
Mhm. Thank you for that advice. I completely agree. And, you mentioned the WTA and the USTA. What are some of your proudest moments and, achievements during your tenure?
So during the WTA, one of my first responsibilities was to mount a campaign to secure equal prize money at Roland Garros and Wimbledon.
Mhm.
Those are two of the Grand Slams. To put this in context, the USTA, US Open, awarded equal prize money in 1973,
Right.
51 years ago. I joined the WTA in 2006. We still didn't have equal prize money at Roland Garros and Wimbledon. Australia came on board in 2001. And we engaged a full-on campaign with consumer data. We took research in UK and France. We engaged high-profile business leaders
Mhm.
who advocated on our behalf, like Richard Branson. We engaged government politicians in the UK. The Minister of Sport was a woman, and Tessa Jowell, the minister, got Tony Blair, who was the Prime Minister, on the floor of the House of Commons. My lords, is it right that the women are not receiving equal prize money?
Yeah.
And lastly, we had Venus Williams, our modern day Billie Jean King, who went into the committee, told them to close their eyes and think about dreaming of winning Wimbledon and all of the hard work. And then when you finally get there, you find out you're not treated equally. And there's a great ESPN documentary, Venus Versus, that tells the story of how we ultimately got equal prize money. And that moment, it's not necessarily about the money, because we were at 93% of what the guys were being paid. It was about the
Right.
principle that the female athletes work as hard. The Grand Slams ask them not to play 5 sets. The athletes are very capable of playing 5 sets, but the Grand Slams don't want them to. And we don't pay less for a movie that might be 2 hours versus a movie that might be 3 hours. So it just sent the message ultimately that the women were equal, and it just really propelled more WTA tournaments to get to equal prize money. And it's really, as Billy would say, it's about the message, and I'm really proud of that
Mhm.
at the WTA.
Mhm. And I think this actually leads perfectly into my next question, which is how do you think your work has impacted women's sports, particularly in tennis?
Well, I think it's crazy how long I've been on the journey, but from running the National Bank Open, the women's event, getting 150,000 people to come up to York University in a town that's hockey, and then hockey, and there was no subway at the time. Just showed the power of these great female athletes. And ultimately at the WTA and the USTA, it's just raising the bar and value creation for the athletes, not only their on-court earnings, but their off-court. And we are on the doorstep of the National Bank getting to equal prize money. That will happen in 2027. So that's fantastic. And ultimately, you mentioned the Order of Canada. You sort of have been a trailblazer in the leadership role. I was the only woman, and sometimes still today, in some of these tennis meetings, I still am. But it has broken that glass ceiling, and there are great female leaders now in sport. Dr. Sherry Bradish, Jackie Ryan, running Canadian Olympic Committee, marketing and foundation. And my US Open team, they are rock star women.
Yeah,
And
I can imagine.
mentioned the Billie Jean King Leadership Award. I must have had about 45 women there from Tennis Canada, from the WTA, from the USTA, and I know that my leadership has had an impact on their careers, and that's pretty meaningful.
Yeah. And, kind of just branching off of that, and I believe we touched on this earlier and you just mentioned it now. You were the winner of the Billie Jean King Leadership Award from the Women's Sports Foundation, and which means you've worked on guaranteeing equal championship money for men and women at the US Open. Now, that's a huge accomplishment, but I'm interested. Did you face any resistance to that?
Sometimes still today, there are people who think that the women don't deserve equal prize money. So the gender bias, hopefully, Berlin, you and your friends have graduated from college and are on your professional journeys, that you don't face the gender bias that still exists in our society, even though we have come a long way, baby. The saying in tennis, we still have a long way to go. That's why this podcast is really actually quite meaningful to me, and applaud you for your leadership to hold it. I think there's just this overarching, the women don't play best of five. But you know what, it has to go on entertainment value, not necessarily on how long a match is. And there are times when the ratings are much higher for the women's event than they are for the men's, and vice versa. There are times when the men's is much higher for the women's. So it's just looking at really the value. This is the entertainment business, and the value that the female athletes are bringing, and we are making headway, and we should talk about what's happening in Canada in women's sport, but we still have a long way to go. When you think about, we'll take an example, Caitlin Clark, the big rage, right? She's making $80,000 for her salary, and the rookie male is like 55 million. Like, it's
Wow.
And she got $400,000 contract, and he's 55 million. Now she's making great off-court endorsements, but the gap is still massive. We've made it in tennis. We're still not there. With National Bank, we'll get there. But there's still so much work to be done to create the value for our female athletes.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. And, even though we have a long way to go, I think on behalf of all women who play sports, they must have been so grateful for the courage it took for you to fight for those rights for them. And I think moving on, I think our listeners would like to hear, what do you think the future holds for women's sports, and what changes would you like to see in the next decade?
This is an exciting time for women's sport in general, in North America, but specifically in Canada. I'm part of the Canadian Women in Sport, and we just distributed 2 research projects. It's Time, that looks at the business case for the investment in women's sport. And it's no coincidence that Canada has just announced that we will get one of the coveted WNBA franchises.
Wow.
There are so many disappointed cities here in the US
Mhm.
that did not get that franchise. You have to shout out to Larry Tannenbaum for believing in women's sport. He brought the Raptors to Toronto. That sellout game that we had a couple years ago. And now Canada will have a WNBA team, which is great. Dana Matheson has just announced, she's a Canadian female soccer player, that she is launching her own Canadian women's professional soccer league. It's under the Project 8, which is super cool. And did you go to a PWHL game this year? It's a
I did
women's
not.
professional. You did not. All right, then that's my ask.
Okay,
You
it's
have
on
to
my
go
list.
to see the female Toronto team.
Okay.
So we have a new professional women's hockey league. 3 teams in Canada, 3 in the US. I went to a game in Montreal. There were 21,000
Wow.
diverse fans, young to old to male to female. And I just thought about my journey where selling women's sport was
Mhm.
really, really tough. And
Yeah.
really in the country, we only had tennis and golf professionally. And now in 2024, we've got women's hockey, we've got soccer professional, and a WNBA team. And what will that do? Why does it matter? You know, sport changes people's lives.
Mhm.
It teaches you all of the skills that sometimes can't be taught in the classroom.
Yeah.
It teaches you how to fail, how to lose, how to win. Comes back to that resilience. And also, we have an obesity issue in this country, in our country. And kids need to be active. They don't need to be competitive. I am exhibit A of someone who just played sport for the fun of it and made a career out of it and go about having those leadership skills and also health skills. And by having the exposure of these athletes, it will inspire Canadians, particularly young ones, to play sport versus always being on their devices. And that's what
Mhm.
really ultimately I see for the future. Canada is a thriving country, it's a diverse country, and sport is such a nation builder. And it's not only a societal benefit and an economic benefit, it's going to be a terrific health benefit to the country.
Mhm.
You got to
And
see it to believe it.
yeah.
And now Canadians are going to be able to see all these great athletes, except right now we'll see them coming up for the Olympic Games, but then they don't have exposure. So
Yeah.
these new leagues will help.
Yeah, I love people like you who are so positive about, the future of women in sports and, raising the point of how important it is for young people to actually play a sport. So I just want to switch gears for a minute here, and I would like to talk a bit about technology. So as technology has impacted almost every business, I'm curious, how has technology had an impact on the business of tennis?
So if we think about the competition, technology's had the most impact on calling matches with line umpires.
Hmm.
So we started in 2006 with called electronic line calling. We still had the line umpires, but the ball mark would be there and players could challenge a line umpire. COVID fast-tracked automated line calling, which meant no more lines people, 100% technology. And
Hmm.
we found that the officials could get it right 75% of the time, but the technology could get it right 97 point something. And so
Wow.
we owe it to the players. If the technology is there to improve the integrity of the competition, that we should use it. Now, a lot of people, we still see lines people at Wimbledon. We still saw them at Roland Garros. I think that they will get there. But that has been the biggest change as how we present the sport. I think there are 950 matches that will happen over 3 weeks at the US Open. And we do have every match broadcasted, but not every match has commentary. But now the data feed, with the automation of voice, we can put that data feed together, and we have virtual. This is where AI is a benefit. Is now creating the commentary alongside of every match. So that is happening, and that'll be full on for us at this year's U.S. Open. So those are a couple of really, really key ones. The digital technology of ticketing, that seems pretty mainstream, but all of the digital integration to remove the friction of the consumer experience. Technology is driving and enhancing all of that for us.
Yeah, I think you raised some really important points there, and I really do believe technology is going to be very significant in the future of sports, especially as it's advancing so rapidly.
We see sometimes in Asia, like music is a big part of sport.
Definitely.
And tennis is the quiet please sport. So live music sometimes doesn't go on so well with tennis.
Yeah.
But in Japan, you see these virtual artists performing um, uh, inside a baseball game. And I don't know enough. I'm showing my age now, Berlin, but we've got a Roblox, and that's helping us with with the younger generation to have tennis be cool.
Yeah.
So we're definitely leaning in, and we know that you and our future fans, you're digitally native. You're going to consume your sport and entertainment very, very differently than certainly I do today, and your parents. And we have to be at the forefront to be competitive.
Yeah. It's honestly incredible how much technology has shaped our lives and, it's
It's only
continuing
beginning,
to.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It is only the beginning. Now, I think it would be nice for our younger listeners to hear some of your advice on, what you would give to women inspiring to take on leadership roles such as yourself.
Well, I think the number one advice: believe in yourself when
Mhm.
others do not. I'll say it
Yeah.
again. Believe in yourself when others do not. So as you go on this journey, and it again maybe goes off course, just continue to believe in yourself. That's number one. Number two, have this growth mindset. I have a little plaque on my desk. It can be done. It actually comes from President Ronald Reagan. I got a leadership course, and it's
Mhm.
simple. Four words. It can be done. Anything is possible. So those are two. I tell everyone um, to get sales experience and to know how to communicate.
Mhm.
You you will learn function, you'll learn all of the different competencies, but you have to know how to communicate, persuade, inspire, deal with conflict, and lead. And you have to know how to sell. And you don't have to necessarily be in sales for your entire journey. And the irony that my success has come through sales, and I'm an introvert. I'm very uncomfortable asking for the sale. So again, I'm living proof that anything is possible. And those two skills have really differentiated me. They continue to be as important today as they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So that's important. Um, I don't know if you've heard about emotional intelligence. You talk
Yep.
about that in school?
Yes, we do.
Great. You're so lucky, because 75% of leaders fail due to their lack of emotional intelligence.
Really.
So again, as you go on this journey and the higher up you go, the ability to understand how you're wired, what's going on with your colleagues, your boss, what's going on with your customers, what's going on in the political environment of your organization and the economy, taking all of those inputs in are really important. It's not just about head down, do a great job. You
Mhm.
have to navigate people. That's one where AI is not going to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are still human beings, and how we feel and how we act under stress and inspiring, it is all EI. And it is, I wish I had been in your shoes. at your age to have learned EI, because I learned it the hard way, hitting my head against the glass ceiling and others. Then it's really, really important. And last thing I'm going to say is there's a book, How Women Rise, and it's written by Sally Helgelson and Marshall Goldsmith. I read it or listened to it about 12 months ago, and it was a light bulb book. And I wish that I had read it again at the start of my career. And Sally does a really nice job of looking at the habits that might have made us successful in the early years that actually impede us going forward. And one of them is be proud of your accomplishments and self-promotion. Women don't necessarily lean in and promote themselves. We're taught, that's not how little girls behave. We're humble, and it's not easy. So be proud of your accomplishments and be bold, and don't be shy about promoting yourself, because it is critically important. Again, who's in charge of your destiny? You are. So it really starts with that heart of promoting yourself. Nothing's perfect. Be careful of that perfectionism. I've got some gene, and that can lead to some challenges like the burnout that I experienced. And don't ruminate. When it's done, it's done. Don't overthink it. It's over. Learn from it and move on. Live kind of in the now and think about how you can go forward.
Yeah. Well, Stacey, I just want to thank you so much for your time and especially on your insights in EI. It really is so important. And
So,
yeah. And I just have one last question for you. How do you hope to be remembered career-wise in the world of sports management and beyond?
well, I think in sports management that I made a difference to the sport of tennis, to the growth of tennis, to the business of tennis, and that there are more kids playing the sport and adults. Tennis gave me everything in my professional life. And so I certainly, from the business side of it, that the sport is robust and growing and on a good footing, and the business of tennis is strong. It's very, very competitive in the entertainment industry. And on a personal level, I wake up every day using my leadership position to ensure that young, diverse leaders like yourself have an opportunity to achieve their professional career goals. That's why when you reached out and said, "Will you do this?" Absolutely. And that I want to know that along this journey, I've made a difference in someone's life, and I think ultimately that's really important. A lot of people help me paying it forward, and I'm sure one day you'll pay it forward as well.
Yeah. So I love that answer. I think that's so incredible. And Stacey, it's been such an honor to be able to speak with you today. You've had a remarkable impact on tennis, but even a larger impact on women in tennis. And I really want to thank you for your valuable time and all of the great advice you've given to my listeners.
Thank you. And I look
Thank you.
forward to following your journey, and whatever I can do to help you or your listeners on the journey, I'm here for you.
Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.